What if I told you there was a secret ritual? A ritual that actually just involves sitting, and if you do this ritual for 20 minutes, 4 times per week, you can reduce your all-cause mortality by close to 40%. So I know what you're thinking, tell me more. This is from peer-reviewed published research studying more than 2,000 individuals. The ritual is using the sauna, and yes, you just need to sit there. Brian Richards is a nationally known expert in sauna therapy, light science, and EMF science.
The years of your life that you're healthy, I think it's well past 100. But we have to recognize we need to mimic our ancestral environment and give our body what it needs. And a portion of that is nourishment and nutrients. But another huge component of that is maintaining the system and purifying it and re-optimizing it. And sauna and light therapy just serves such a central practice to that.
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better. Well, actually, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms. Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
So before we jump into fantastic rituals, right, that can extend our lives, can you give us some more details about your background, your story? What drove you ultimately to create your own I love this name, incandescent electric light bath? And also I got to ask, did you ever consider IELB as the company name? But that you can throw that at the end.
No, that term comes from Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. He was the inventor of the electric light bath. And it's the use of incandescent bulbs to power a sauna. So that name comes from him. It's a little bit unwieldy. So I ended up having my own personal healing journey that led to the formation of my company, SaunaSpace. So where I started was I was done with my college career, and I had some kind of frustrating health issues that were hard to identify, and I was not happy with the prescriptions, that I was supposed to be taking from the doctor. So I think I had adrenal fatigue. I was lethargic, and I had acne on my back where my kidneys are, and I was kind of low energy and irascible. And yet, if you met me on the street, you'd be like, "Well, what's your problem? You look fine." And so I got recommended to take different things. At one point I got recommended to take Accutane for acne. And at that point I was like, no, I'm not doing this. There's got to be a root cause to this. And so I was dissatisfied with all the conventional medical recommendations. And I grew up in a family of doctors. So my mother is a still practicing alternative health general practitioner. And she was doing supplement, vitamin therapy in the 80s in Montana. So she was always doing natural stuff. And my father is a radiologist, retired now. So growing up, I saw those two different approaches to healthcare, and I saw the sort of the radiology and the revolving door, the diagnose and treat approach versus what my mom was doing. I was always most impressed by that. So it was in fact my mom who recommended that I use sauna. And I was intrigued by this. So I get online, like everybody does, and I'm looking things up, and I found some of the research like what you found about reducing all-cause mortality. And I was really, really impressed with it. I was also excited at how that modern observation of how good sauna is for our health aligns with this worldwide tradition across all cultures of using sauna, of using heat to purify the body in some kind of sauna. So every human culture has this across the world, really, and it's been around for thousands of years. So long story short, at the end of my research, I found a modern doctor's rendition of the electric light bath and read Dr. Kellogg's book, Light Therapeutics, that you can read online. And I built my own. And I used it, Chris, and I right before bed, and I slept well. And that was one of my other problems. I had insomnia. I would just kind of lay there trying to fall asleep, but my nervous system was obviously very sympathetic and not and so my sleep wasn't so good. So I used my electric light bath, and I slept really well. So then I used it the next night. I slept well again, and I consider my sleep problems to have gone away like that quick. And so that intrigued me, and I ended up using it for 6 months vigorously, 3 or 4 times a week. And it's when I did the look back then that I realized, wow, I actually had brain fog that I didn't realize. I was just a little bit foggy, and my mood was different. It was I was, all the sort of moodiness went away. I had a lot more energy and had ability to focus and clarity and patience and all these like amazing things. And I was like, whoa, there's something really transformative that happened here. And like you said, it was just involving me sitting on my lazy butt in this sauna and sweating. I didn't know anything at that point about light therapy and about mitochondria. And those are the unique features of using the electric light bath for a sauna is you get this other therapy on top of it called light therapy. So I had this amazing healing transformation, and my personal journey in that inspired me to start making some for some other people. And eventually I got a business loan and started a website, and that was like over 10 years ago now. And so now I'm talking to you from my factory here. You can see it's the shift's done for the day, but this is all handmade in the US and in Missouri. And we have a very different sauna experience. We're using light to heat the body, and it's a real game changer in terms of we're getting all of the sauna stuff a lot better and a lot faster, but also we're introducing this much needed nourishment that we're supposed to get every day from the sun called near infrared light. And it's just like sauna. These are two essential components to maintain one's body and one's mind, one's system in this crazy world we live in.
Okay, so that makes great sense. You go do the research, you sleep really well. Okay, there's something here, and then you have other friends who are maybe going through similar situations. You're like, hey, let me put together this thing for you. As you were doing that research, can you break down, because I imagined if you're like me, right, and I've got a product out there, and now I continue to go back to the original research and really kind of become an encyclopedia of it. Can you break down the important details of some of the studies that you initially read, which kind of led you to make this light bath?
Originally, this was in 2011, so this was before the Lau Cannon study came out in 2015 that you referred to, the 2,000 finished males. So I saw, you see widespread, if you look up in the PubMed research on humans in reduction of pain, reduction of improvement of nervous system functioning, improved tissue oxygenation and blood circulation. And really in almost every disease category, you see an amelioration of some, if not all of the symptoms using sauna. And so those were the things that fascinated me initially is that not just that research, but what was underlying that research. Like what's the big secret here? The big secret is all of these diseases that we have are a product of disharmony in our internal environment and also our external environment. So all of the diseases that we suffer from nowadays are due to poison. We have poison in the body, and we have all these different subcategories and names like autoimmune and this other stuff, but really it's just poisons in the body that the body's trying to get out. The human body is the most beautifully engineered tool that we have in our universe. It works really, really well if it gives a basic modicum of what it needs. And one of the things it needs is the maintenance, is the cleaning out, and it's something that we forget. So if poisons are the biggest problem, then having a ritual, a frequent, if not daily rituals that involves purifying the body becomes the answer, the underlying principle behind why sauna works for everything. And then we saw in 2015, a 20-year study on 2,000 finished males where we saw what you said. They saw a risk in dying of all things was reduced like 40%. And what's interesting about that study is the group that was doing sauna 3 days a week had an additional 20 to 30% reduction in all-cause mortality. And then what's even more interesting is they did an update to that study in 2021 where they instead started looking at dementia outcomes. And they found the same results, Chris. So they found that risk of dementia is reduced dramatically if you use sauna 1 day a week, but 3 times a week, you have another 20 to 30% reduction. So sauna is reducing your risk of dying of all things, and it's reducing your risk of developing brain problems, dementia, where your brain doesn't work. And so if we look at like nowadays where we really have a kind of a mental health crisis where people are getting things like early onset Alzheimer's disease, in their 30s, And that's probably one of the biggest complaints I think that's out there right now is mental health and how do we improve that? And here we have one practice that's hitting the whole body and hitting all of those things all at once. So my initial research was only in sauna. And then I began to look at photobiomodulation, which means light controlling biology. So it's a fancy scientific term for light therapy. And I dove into that research, and really that was just as interesting, because if you look at the PubMed now, you see over 7,000 studies on the use on photobiomodulation. So photobiomodulation is the use of red and near-infrared light to heal damaged and degenerate cells and to reoptimize function of healthy cells. And the more we do this in tissues and organs, we get amelioration of like so many different systems, our symptoms and diseases. And it's such a simple thing, and yet it's something that we forget nowadays, that we're beings of light, that fundamentally we know now through all this modern research and modern technology, we have systems in the body that are fundamentally electrical in nature. We're influenced by electromagnetism, whether it's from the sun or the man-made EMFs that we've created for all of our technology. And within the cells of our bodies, we have all these different systems that are not so much biochemical, but rather electromagnetic in nature. So this idea that you can take light from the sun, a wave, and transform it in the body through a light receptor into a particle, into a biological system, is really fascinating. And so I did a ton of research on that, and light therapy is amazing. So light therapy, like I said, it's so simple. You're promoting healing and reoptimization everywhere it hits. And the primary mechanism of light therapy is in the mitochondria. It's the cytochrome C. It's the enzyme that means cell of light. And it's a light receptor protein for red and near-infrared light. And so then I looked at our ancestral environment, like, where do we get this light? Of course, we get it from the sun. But what do we get from the sun, really? If we look at the power we absorb from the sun in terms of photons per second experience, 70% of it's near-infrared. It's not red. So we see in the market mostly red light-based LED light therapy products in the light therapy space. And we stand in contrast to all that, because we're using this electric light bulb. We're using this big 250 watt bulb that emits light like the sun via incandescence. But what's really interesting about it is it mimics the sun's focus on near infrared. So 70% of what we absorb from the sun is near infrared. It's near infrared that's doing the most of the photobiomodulation in our bodies. Only near infrared is doing it in our brains. Only near infrared light goes through bone tissue. So the primary nutrient we get from the sun that heals us all the time, every day when we got it, is near infrared. And if we're going to do light therapy, because of the deep penetration, I want this benefit to the deep organs of my body and every cell of my body, not just the outer layers. So near infrared is where the magic's happening, and it's with the incandescent bulb that we use. I actually developed our thermal light bulb. It's sort of an improvement on the original incandescent bulb that Dr. Kellogg used, to where it runs with has a filament that's designed to run hotter, so it emits more near infrared. But all that to say that near infrared, if we use near infrared, we get all these benefits of light therapy. And this is something that people may be confused about. Near infrared does two things, and it's the different portions of near infrared that do them. The high energy portion does light therapy. It's absorbed by the mitochondria. It does all the light therapy stuff. The lower end of near infrared, from 1,000 to 1,500 nanometers, is absorbed by water, only partially. And that's why near infrared wavelengths penetrate really deeply. Near infrared wavelengths penetrate like 4 or 5 inches into the body. So when you sit in front of this bulb in our electric light bath, you're getting this full spectrum emission that has all these different near infrared photons, and some are hitting the mitochondria and simulating light therapy, and others are being absorbed by water deeply in the body and heating up the body. So by using the incandescent bulb as a light source instead of an LED and a far infrared emitter, as you see in almost all of their infrared saunas, we're we're getting the light and the heat together, and we're getting it as nature intended from a full spectrum light source that's primarily near infrared. So that's the big difference of what we're doing. And my research, the more I researched light therapy, I got so excited because it has so much benefit on its own. And to combine the two is this really sweet sauce that is unique among all the therapeutics out there, really, in sauna and in light therapy. It's like, why not do the both together? A lot of people are taking a traditional cabinet sauna or a far infrared sauna and they're adding a LED light therapy panel into it. But the original form of light therapy is the sun, and the incandescent light bulb uniquely mimics that and producing light in the same way. That's nature's light. It's analog light that's broad spectrum with mostly near infrared.
So it makes me think, and I've got to ask, right? So when you had your first incandescent electric light bath, was it enclosed? Because I've been to your booth. I know what your current SaunaSpace equipment looks like. Was it enclosed? Because I wonder if Dr. Kellogg actually had people enclosed, or they just experienced some elevated temperatures because of what you just described.
He had, his was enclosed too. It looked like a big Victorian cabinet. You can see it in his book, Light Therapeutics. It was a large array of smaller light bulbs, like 20 of them. And you would walk in and the cabinet would close and you'd be surrounded. You would stand actually in it. He also had a photophore. So our photon therapy light is a modernization of that. It's a portable light bulb, basically. So he was doing both. He didn't know anything about mitochondria. He just observed that for some reason, this light, it produces a more rapid internal temperature increase than the Turkish bath and the classic sauna. And he didn't have a quantum mechanical understanding of that, but he knew that there was something both special, that using this light heats up the body a lot faster, but also that there's something special about the light because his patient outcomes are incredible. He logged over 200,000 sauna sessions, like 50,000 patients he studied in the first decade of the 20th century. And he talks about all that in his book.
So was he initially, and maybe he didn't answer this question, but was he initially looking to just kind of recreate the sauna experience, which he thought was probably healthy with these light bulbs, and then kind of notice additional benefits? Or was he just kind of playing with science, as inventors often do?
He was a doctor, first and foremost, and he had a spa in Brow Creek, Michigan, where he was doing a lot of avant-garde therapies. He was also doing cold therapy and vibration therapy and various kind of crazy things. His brother is actually the guy who invented Kellogg's cornflakes and started that company. So there's some notoriety with that, with their surname. But he was the brother who had a clinic, and this is at a time at the turn of the century that's a few years after the invention of the incandescent bulb as we know it, which was invented in 1887. So he was a contemporary of Tesla and Edison a little bit, and also a cohort of doctors who were using electric light bulbs for healing. There was Dr. Gaudiali, he had his spectrochrome therapy. There was Dr. Babbitt. I forget the name of his book, but all these guys were using electric light bulbs with filters and different things and different protocols for healing. And it was a really exciting era where this was before the rise of the American Medical Association and the FDA. So this was back in the United States when we used to have cancer spas and we had chiropractic and stuff, which we have now, but that was actually made illegal with the rise of the FDA in like the 30s up until the 70s when the Chiropractic Association sued in court to bring back chiropractic. So at this time, I would assume he's sitting there in his clinic and he starts to get interested in electric light bulbs and also what these other guys are doing, who he knows, and he starts trying it out in his clinic.
And to some good effect, right? Like, so that's pretty cool. So you've talked about mitochondria, like, so maybe eking more value or whatever out of the mitochondria. What does the medical community believe is the mechanism of action? Is it just improvements in mitochondrial function? I know there are heat shock proteins that are often mentioned in the context of saunas.
Yeah, well, you have to definitely treat each on its own. So sauna therapy is heating up the cells and heating up the tissues to produce a heat shock protein response. So these are dormant actors at resting body temperature. You heat up the cells for a few minutes by 2 or 3 degrees, and the nucleus begins to produce, it gets a signal and it produces heat shock proteins. So heat shock proteins do two things really. They make cell detox more efficient in various ways, and they reoptimize protein function. So they actually go around and refold folded proteins and move them around and reoptimize protein function. So when you're doing sauna, you're not just purifying the body and detoxing, you're also reoptimizing the function of the cells and the proteins themselves. So there's those two things that that sauna is doing that have really widespread implications for all tissues and all organ functioning and the whole body in general. In addition, they definitely help your mitochondria work better. Like, for example, when you heat up the mitochondria, the electron transport enzymes get closer together. So you improve cellular energy production. You improve that efficiency just by using sauna. If you set that aside for a second and all the other things going on with sauna, if you look at light therapy, in light therapy, there's a near-infrared photon that hits the enzyme on the mitochondria and upregulates its function, and it causes what are called the mitochondrial effects. So you immediately get more ATP production, more energy production, nitric oxide release out of the cell, and you get what are produced the reactive oxygen species, which have a bad name if they're produced in an oxidative stress state, like from blue light. But when they're produced from near-infrared or red light, they actually all work together with the ATP and the nitric oxide to produce all these amazing regenerative effects in the cell. So you get growth factors produced, there's inflammatory mediators produced, and you get improved functioning of the transcription factors. So that's anti-aging. You're making the way gene expression works better. So with light therapy, you are healing the cell. You're activating the mitochondria as this intelligent actor that helps heal the cell in so many ways, of reducing inflammation and improving function, and actually improving our blueprint, our DNA itself in the epigenetic state and how it's expressed. So everything is now working better. It also improves the functioning of the mitochondria itself. And we know now more than ever that mitochondrial health is one of the best benchmarks for overall health and wellness, and also longevity. Like, your mitochondria, if they're working well, you're doing well. So both light therapy and heat therapy in their own ways are making the mitochondria work better and assisting the mitochondria in doing its job. And there's other things that light therapy does as well. For example, like melatonin production. So the body's number one antioxidant is melatonin. And what we understand now, this is actually recent research, Chris, is that 94% of the body's cellular melatonin, or I should say 94% of the body's melatonin production is cellular. And it's made when near-infrared light hits the cell. And we're producing melatonin, which is there to counteract all the free radical production that energy production causes. So where most of the oxidative stress is occurring, if we get near-infrared light from the sun or from these lamps, we are refilling our antioxidant reserves in our cells on a daily basis. So all these things come together to nourish the body and give it what it needs so it can do its job, which is to heal and take care of us. And the perfect engineering that's already in there, it's just needing a few of these basic ingredients that our ancestors got. But we're indoors now. We're in these climate controlled environments. The average person gets in the US gets 7 minutes of sunshine a day or something. It's like when they're going to their car and when they're coming home from work. So and yet our biology hasn't changed. So we still need what we've always needed. And what I do here is, it's not a replacement for the sun. And yet still it's this really amazing alternative for the modern life, where we are just not out in the sun, or if we're out in the sun, our shirts and we have clothes on, and we're not getting that light therapy and that photobiomodulation deep to all the cells of our body like our ancestors did.
So this next question is probably more for kind of traditional sauna, but I'll spin it up into something else interesting. What is the ideal temperature? Like when you're doing a session, let's talk about sauna and blend in the light therapy however you want. What is an ideal temperature?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a longstanding point of confusion. Many people think that what matters is the air temperature. And so that you need a sauna that's 170 degrees in order to achieve the outcomes that we see in the literature in the sauna studies. And I would direct people to read Dr. Rhonda Patrick's article from, I think, 2021. So it's Sauna Use as a Lifestyle Practice to Extend Healthspan. And it's a great summarizing article of all the research, all things sauna, and it really breaks it down really beautifully. What we see in there is that in all of the finished studies, there's 3 outcomes that indicate that we've gotten what we define as a sauna session. And one is to raise core temperature 3 degrees. You can measure this with a thermometer. And the second is to sweat out a pound of water, so a half kilogram of water on average. And the third, and those are 2 things you can actually measure because you could weigh yourself before and after a sauna session. You know, of course, when you do sauna for a little bit, you know when you sweat out that much water. You know when you got that core temp up. The third outcome, though, is subjective. It's called a subjective state of exhaustion. So when you feel really uncomfortable, like when you're working out and you're like really getting tired and uncomfortable, that's when you're producing a lot of what are called dynorphins. Dynorphins cause that feeling of discomfort. But the more endorphins you produce during sauna or exercise, the more endorphins are produced afterwards, the more of those feel-good molecules you get. So ideally, when you do sauna, you want to raise core temperature 3 degrees, sweat out a pound of water, and get a little bit uncomfortable at the end. And if you understand that, then you understand that's the goal of sauna. Now, how do I do that? What's the way I'm going to heat my body up? The traditional way is to use the air. So that's a finished sauna, and also far infrared saunas. And far infrared saunas are infrared saunas, but they're using long wavelength, low energy infrared. This doesn't promote any photobiomodulation or any light therapy, and it's not deeply penetrating into the body. For that reason, you have to preheat those saunas. Regular saunas and far infrared saunas, you have to preheat them between a half an hour to an hour to get the air hot enough so that the air can do its primary job in heating you up. If you were in a hot bathtub, it'd be the same thing. Get the water really hot and you sit in there and you wait until it heats you up to achieve these sauna outcomes. With a regular sauna and a far infrared sauna, you're going to be in there 45 minutes to an hour until you reach that, hey, I've sweat out a pound of water and I've raised core temperature 3 degrees. If we use near infrared light to heat the body, we're not heating the body conductively with the air. We're heating the body radiantly using light. So the light is penetrating many inches into the body. And instead of heating the body from the outside in, we're heating the body from the inside out, as it were. And furthermore, when you use near infrared light to heat the body, like what we do at SaunaSpace, you don't preheat the sauna. You just get in and you turn the lights on. The second you turn the lights on, the heating effect is occurring to the deepest organs and the deepest cells of the body. Whereas in a finished sauna, that heat shock protein response is probably not happening to the core of the body until like 20 or 30 minutes into the session. So all that time, you're just kind of waiting for something to happen. So when you use near infrared light to heat the body, the heating effect is immediate. You're sweating in like 10 minutes. You're done with your sauna session in probably 20 or 25 minutes. And again, you didn't preheat. And since we understand that the outcomes are sweating out a pound of water, raising core temperature 3 degrees, all of these ways are great. All these ways are great to do sauna. But if you're interested in doing it the fastest way possible, it's using radiant near infrared light. And if you're interested in doing it and getting the additional benefits of light therapy, which are really quite amazing, it's all about the technology you use. So that's a misunderstanding that I think was cleared up in this article. And it's really the difference of what we do, Chris, that it's so, nowadays, nobody has any time for anything. And if you can imagine having unless you had like a remote control, I guess, basically a 2-hour investment to preheat your sauna and use it to get a proper sauna session, that's not a time investment that's really accessible to everybody. if I can get my sauna session done in 25 or 30 minutes, or with our super sauna, which is 7 bulbs. So it's our standard sauna with an extra 3 bulbs in it. Those sessions only take 15 minutes. So if you use the super sauna, that's like 1 hour a week investment to be doing 3 or 4 sessions a week. And that's something that, for the benefits minute per minute that you get, that are really unique in all therapeutics you can do in terms of reducing all-cause mortality, reducing risk of dementia, and all the amazing benefits of light therapy that are not just cellular benefits, they're very much mood-altering benefits in terms of improving mood, improving neuropsychiatric function, improving cognitive function. There's nothing that compares to that.
You really broke down and kind of answered my next question, but I'll ask it in case there's some nuances that you want to share. So the goal is increase core temperature 3 degrees, sweat out a pound of sweat, and then have some sense of exhaustion. I know that I'm a guy that this may not be very manly, but I actually like baths, and it's a way that I'll tend to relax on weekends. And the latter part of my bath is like drain the tub, fill it with extremely hot water, drain the tub, like to get my core body temperature. I've never thrown a thermometer in. I need to do that. But I'm pretty sure like when I get out, the first thing I want to do is like get on some shorts and go sit outside and just not do anything. Like it's exhausting. Like I think that's the right thing. So I'm probably hitting some of the marks. I would think that a hot bath is actually faster than, a traditional sauna that you might turn on, right? If you think of the ramp up, you also think of the heat transfer, water, significantly higher heat transfer coefficient, then it's probably easier to do in a hot bath than it is and to have, a traditional sauna, which, a traditional sauna takes up a lot of space and can be problematic in and of itself. So the question is, how confident are you that you're creating the important aspects? I think the answer is, well, if the aspects are the pound of water, the 3 degrees, and exhaustion, then you have that sense, probably 100% confident. It would be my guess.
Yeah, we're definitely getting that. You see that in the success of our product and our customer stories and our customer experiences. And also, this is not a new technology without any sort of field experience. There's 130 years of safe use in the market of this technology. It was just essentially a technology that thrived for about 20 or 25 years and then was forgotten in time until with the help of some amazing people, kind of brought it back and modernized it. It's definitely a proven concept, and it's not just about those results. It's about the, there's the spiritual and the energetic and the emotional and sort of the mental components of it that I think are really interesting, really tremendous when you do sauna in this way. A lot of saunas can be fatiguing and draining, and kind of like you described, you get out of your bathtub and you're like kind of tired and worn out. When you use light at the same time, when you use near infrared light, it becomes a very energizing, very zen experience. It's very joyful. It returns us to a state of being, that instead of doing all day long, we get back to, we're getting back to ourselves and getting back into our parasympathetic state and back to sort of the oneness that we used to have a lot of, ancestrally before modern life and all these distractions. So when you're in our type of sauna, there is an experience there that has a sense of that's almost spiritual in nature. There's a mindfulness in there. It's a great place to do your meditation and your breath work, and you're doing all these things again, like we've been saying, without really doing anything. You're doing so much, and that's something that is rare nowadays. We're all expected for our health to go do something, to go achieve something, to get these X results. But it turns out in using the electric light bath, you do nothing, and you do so much more than you would ever do going out and actively doing something.
You are enjoying, well, at least I hope you're enjoying, the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow, and make sure you share. But don't be that annoying guy, whatever you do. Don't share it with people who aren't actually interested in living beyond the norms. Cold therapy. Do you have a therapy practice? Are you kind of aware of benefits of marrying sauna and cold? And do you have any thoughts about that? Cold plunges?
Yeah, cold plunges are super cool. In the Finnish culture, that's a mainstay tradition to do hot, cold, hot. So you get in the sauna and get really hot, and then you jump in the icy lake and cool down, and you go back to hot. And the combining the two is really cool because our bodies are designed to be stimulated by severe temperature changes. Like our ancestors had this, and it stimulates a lot of healing and stem cell stuff, and like overall many benefits. And it's all about stressing the body as our ancestors did, and not as like, it's all about intermittent stress. This is hormetic stress therapy. So when you do a sauna and then you do a cold bath, you bring yourself back down. That allows you to go back to the sauna and get additional benefit because you can heat yourself back up. And it's a beautiful play if you have that. I personally don't have a cold plunge. I did get one for our store that we are setting up. So we thought it'd be cool to have like fire and ice. I personally like to be warm a lot more than I like to be cold. The research, I'm definitely not knocking the research on cold therapy. I think a lot of people get amazing results with it, and we're seeing that, and I absolutely support that success. In the literature, though, the sauna research is a little more compelling in terms of
stronger. Yeah,
it's more. There's more of it, and it's stronger in general. And the light therapy stuff is also something that it's not a sidecar to the conversation. It's a partner in this conversation. Like we need that just as much. Our number one nutrient is light. You can actually, if you get a ton of sunlight, like in the summer, and you have your shirt off a lot and you're out every day, you can satisfy like up to 70% of your caloric requirement just from light. And that's how much that we're beings of light. We live on light. And when we take that away, we have to eat more dense, nutrient dense foods to like offset that. But the light is so important. And for me, I don't have a lot of time. I'm running my company and I have my boys and all this stuff. So I end up only having time for about 15 or 20 minutes in my sauna. But I absolutely support the cold therapy for those that like it, and those who are wishing to combine it. The traditional Finnish approach is hot, cold, hot, is to finish on hot. You can definitely play with that. You can finish on cold. You can start out with cold and then go to hot. And that's really interesting because I have done that where I start out with a cold bath and then get in my sauna. And when you do a cold bath, if you start out at 98.6 degrees, you go down to like maybe 96 or 95. So you're really cold. And then to actually sweat, you still need to get back up to like 101. So it does take longer to get up. But some of the most amazing feeling I've had in terms of the euphoria, the cloud nine feeling of after the sauna session has come in doing that cold plunge first. And it's that long extended session that there's really definitely something to be said about it. If you have the ability to combine the two, that's amazing.
And maybe you just do, get a couple bags of ice, throw them in a bathtub and do that from time to time. Because I think the saunas that I'm aware of, maintenance is significantly easier than if you're trying to maintain your cold plunge pool or whatever it is. Because just maintaining that water is a problem. I remembered my previous question. I know. So at the conference that I've seen you at, you actually provide an EMF free space, right? So people can just go in. You talked about having a Zen experience in your sauna. Talk a little bit about EMF, right? Because you've got incandescent bulbs in there, and that could be a potential EMF source. And talk to me. Give me your thoughts about EMF.
Yeah. So EMF can be good or can be bad. It stands for electromagnetic field or electromagnetic force. So we have electromagnetism in nature from the sun, and everything has its own frequency. Like the earth has what's called the Schumann frequency. It's like, 7.8 hertz or something like that. And these these frequencies of nature are the frequencies that we've evolved to benefit from. And so when you stand out barefoot on the earth, it drains all the positive charge out of your body and floods your body with millions of electrons and realigns you. You know, our bodies, our system seeks to be in alignment with nature. And it's the same thing with the sun. You have all this electromagnetism coming from the sun that's nourishing all life on earth. And now, as we've discussed, it nourishes our bodies and does all this amazing stuff. So that's the good side of it. The bad side of it really is all the man-made EMF. It's called non-native EMF. So nowadays we have like a billion times more man-made EMF in our environment than we ever had before. It's primarily cell phone signal nowadays, but it also includes Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and television and radar and things like that. And all this stuff, it turns out, is damaging to us. It basically causes oxidative stress in our body. It's hurting us. And it's the cellular pathways are kind of complicated, but essentially, if people want to know, the electric field hits your voltage-gated calcium ion channels. It opens them. It causes too much calcium to flood into the cell, which causes too much oxidative stress, which leads to production of peroxynitrite and OO minus. And that is a nasty little molecule that can penetrate the nucleus, which few things can. And it causes DNA damage. So it causes mutagenic effects. And yet it's not ionizing radiation. So you used to think if it's not an X-ray and it's not ultraviolet light, like if it's not ionizing radiation, then it's not damaging to us unless it causes a thermal effect. And that's the way the telecom industry operates. Hey, we're not emitting enough cell phone signal, enough electric field power to heat the water molecules in your body. Therefore, there is no biological effect. But as I've just described, because we're fundamentally light beings and we have all these electrical systems, a very small amount of electric field does influence our biology. So all this man-made EMF is basically slowly damaging us. And it's very weird for us because we don't have any biological programming for it. And it's not a stress that ever ends. It's not an intermittent stress that our bodies are well designed to respond to and adapt to. It's a permanent stress. It's 24 hours a day. It's hitting us. And yet it's almost a cognitive dissonance because unlike our ancestors, if we had something stressful like a lion chasing us down, we recognize that, we can consciously identify that and then respond and get our nervous system going and get our adrenaline pumping and respond to the environment. In this case, there's the stress that we can't see and we can kind of feel it if we're those of us who are sensitive to it, but we can't really see it and sense it so easily. And yet it's there stressing us out. So we're trying to get used to it. Just like indoors, we're trying to get used to all this blue light that's around us all the time, but we're not programmed to deal with it very well. So all that to say that man-made EMF exposure does have a negative biological effect, and it's now being associated long-term with disease. The highest density of voltage-gated calcium ion channels is in the heart and in the nerve tissue, so in the brain. So you're seeing the closest associations of disease with exposure to those tissues. And if you look in the literature, the closest associations between the use of a cell phone and some disease, it's probably no surprise to you, Chris, that what you see are the most common things are brain cancer and throat cancer. And that's because you're holding a cell phone like this all day long and you're having a lot of this microwave frequency radiation going into you, and it just becomes too much over time. So it's a widespread problem. And what do we do about it? I didn't know anything about this in the beginning, but as I realized it a few years into creating SaunaSpace, I realized there is an issue. Well, what can we do? It turns out we can block this stuff. So you can use metal to block magnetic and electric fields, particularly electric fields. So I started out by electromagnetically shielding our panel products. So all of the wiring and the power cord and the lamp guard itself is not just to protect you from touching the bulb, which is really hot. It also blocks the electric field from coming out of the filament, which otherwise would come out several feet. So yes, all things that are run on electricity may have EMF issues, But the solution to it is electromagnetic shielding, which is possible. And we've done that with our panel products. And so we're not bringing any more EMF to the party. There's no electric field or magnetic field going on at SaunaSpace. But that I felt was not enough because of all the EMF in the person's home environment, right? They have all the cell phone signal and the Wi-Fi and all of that. So eventually we developed our grounding mat that's present in both of our saunas. And then after that, we developed our EMF shield. So it's a fabric that's made of organic cotton and 35% silver that blocks all the ambient EMF from coming inside the sauna. It makes the whole sauna a grounded Faraday cage. And it's a real experience. Like, it's hard to describe, but when you walk in there, Chris, it feels very quiet to the senses. And for most people, it's like quite unusual because they've never had that. You know, it's hard to find that anywhere. Even anywhere you go, if you can answer your cell phone, you're getting radiation from the tower. It doesn't matter if you don't have any locally transmitting devices, you're still getting some of that stress that it's like this electrosmog. It's this pollution that's all around us. So in the SaunaSpace Faraday that's blocking all that out, you go in there and it's really a pre-technology space at that point. And so there's nothing in there. There's no Bluetooth track lighting. There's no ambient EMF. The only thing that's there is this campfire spectrum of light that is the healing band of the sun. And it's a very different experience. It's very nourishing, and the market has accepted it. So it's has a lot of silver, so it's costly to make, and yet people want that. The more people are becoming more aware of the issues with EMF, we put our phones into airplane mode. There are many other things that we can do, but it is an issue that's out there, and it's not going away. But I'm very optimistic about it. And one of the reasons I'm optimistic is, besides all the EMF shielding and all of that, what can you do about the EMF damage that occurs, the oxidative stress that occurs in the body? Well, it turns out there's like a 20-year-old research into this in the use of sauna to reduce the amount of peroxynitrite in your body. So when you do sauna, any sauna, you heat up the body, get it to sweat, you're reversing the damage that EMFs cause. So here's a way where we don't just have to cower and hide. We want to minimize our exposure, but we can also heal from it. And the answer is sauna.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So I think just from a Zen perspective, the advice would be, hey, let's not make the sauna time a time where you're on your cell phone, swiping left, swiping right, swiping up and down. And you've actually kind of taken that to the next level. Let's actually disconnect from the EMF that is addressing the cell phone. I think that's pretty cool. And then the sauna turns out to repair some of the damage, ostensibly from your exposure throughout the day. All right, Brian, this has been absolutely fascinating. I do have some wrap-up questions as we're coming to a close. And the first one is, do you have a target age that you want to live to?
Right now I'm feeling like 133 sounds nice.
133. I like that. And is there an age? Do you think humans have like is there some number that humans can't live past, or what is your thought process on how long humans can live?
That's a great question. There's, in the Bible and also in other traditions, there are many legends of humans living hundreds and hundreds of years, 700-800 years. And who knows, how accurate or how precise that is. But I think those legends indicate there's a kernel of truth there, in that there is a way, and there are certain humans in our ancestry and in the human race who have lived a lot longer than our normal lifespan. Our normal lifespan has just gone down quite a bit, actually, during the pandemic. So I think that I wouldn't want to put a number, I wouldn't want to cap that figure, but I think that with the understanding that we have in longevity nowadays, the things like what you're focused on and what we're doing in natural health, I think it's imminently achievable for everybody to be living well past 100, not in the sense of lifespan, but in the sense of health span. The years of your life that you're healthy, I think it's well past 100. But we have to recognize that we need to mimic our ancestral environment and give our body what it needs. And a portion of that is nourishment and nutrients. But another huge component of that is maintaining the system and purifying it and re-optimizing it. And sauna and light therapy just serves such a central practice to that.
Excellent. And what are 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts, because everybody likes shortcuts, that you would share for longevity and a long health span?
I would say have a positive relationship with food. People get obsessed with food and getting exactly X, Y, and Z, and there's all these different diets. I don't think if you're eating healthy, real food, ideally organic, it's all about your relationship to food. And that's one example of your relationship to your intuition. The body knows what it needs. And if we listen to our bodies and get back in tune with our being and our connection and our self-awareness, we actually already know what's good for us, whether it's food or practices or exercise or mindfulness or sleeping. We know, but we need to get back to paying attention to that. So I'm a big fan of being just really intentional with everything, going to the ice cream store and getting some ice cream, but like looking and what does your body want right now? What will serve it best? What will serve your highest and best self? And that's the way it is in all things. So that's definitely one. The other one is just to go to sleep on time. And people really tend to abuse this, and myself included sometimes, watching TV after dark or blue light, but it's really damaging to our health to go to sleep late and also to get all that blue light after sunset. So for me, that's been a big thing in the last few years is being intentional with my evening time and making sure I don't have any blue light, and whatever it is, I'm going to bed on time. The sleep is where we reprogram, and we don't just heal the body, we heal the mind. The subconscious is working through the language of metaphor to correct things in our brain. And if we shortchange that, we shortchange a big aspect of our health.
Excellent. So I've got positive relationship with food. I don't know if this was the second one, like being intentional and listening to your intuition. I think we could call that a second one, and then a focus on sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That sound right?
Yeah.
All right. How can people contact you, Brian?
They can find us at sauna.space, and on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and all that, we're at SaunaSpace. At SaunaSpace is our handle. So you can find us there. Our company's based in Missouri, and you can call us up and chat and email with us. And also on our website, we have a lot of we have a cool learning center where you can learn about all the stuff we talked about and see some visuals on the spectrum and what sauna does for you. And also you can definitely listen to me on YouTube. I've done a lot of talks and a lot of podcasts and some seminars and stuff. And yeah, if you reach out to us and you ask for me, I may not be available immediately, but I'm definitely always available at some point directly.
Excellent. And what in the near future are you excited about?
I'm excited about the future of natural health. I think people are finally considering natural health approaches as a first approach instead of a fallback after they do conventional medical approaches and then they don't work well, and then they're coming to natural health second. I'm seeing for the first time in the last few years people considering as a first choice natural health, not just for emergency care but for chronic illness. And so we're seeing that in the industry, that the whole big family of natural health technology and wellness practices all providing so much more value, than the old medical approaches to things. And especially in the pandemic, we've seen a real awakening and an empowerment of people to take back their health into their own hands. And we have these amazing tools that you can have at home, like what we do and other products, where you take care of yourself and you invest time and energy and financially as well into your health and your personal care. And you don't get caught up in the system of, the diagnose and treat stuff. And you avoid those pitfalls later if you take care of yourself now. So I'm really excited to see that people are taking that seriously instead of investing their time and resources in other things. There's a real shift now to people taking personal care and personal health seriously.
Yeah, I had an interview earlier today, and one of the kind of positive things about it was talking how there are people now who are as young as in their 30s who are kind of focusing on longevity, maybe even as young as 25. And, I don't know about you, Brian, but at 25, I was not thinking about longevity, right? Like that was not on my radar.
No.
And it's exciting to see that that's on, the minds of people who are young, who maybe historically hadn't been focused on it. All right. You can find Brian at sauna.space. That's his website. On the social media, his handle is SaunaSpace. You can find him on YouTube. Just search up Brian Richards. And Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I'm so grateful.
We'll talk soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.